welcome into the Gramlich and Mac Lane podcast presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Gramlich and Mac Lane. Mac, I was just telling you, this weather, it's getting a little warmer, you know? I feel like everyone's just in a better mood. It's time to go, like, even if it's only hitting 70s, which is still great, maybe time to grill a little more, right? Because it's not just miserable winter.
Yes.
I'm here for it, Mac.
That's what I was hoping you were getting to that, alluding to that. Y'all, and it really doesn't matter, to be honest. You know,
yeah, Mac will be out there if it's 15 degrees.
If it's cold, if it's snowing, we're still doing it.
But I'm not built that way.
Yeah, it felt great outside the other day. And, man, I just was like, let's just go smoke some meat. So literally, funny enough, my grandmother and my mom, Nana, shout out Nana, and my mom were on the way back to their house in Sumter from Tennessee, which you have to go right through Columbia. And they're like, hey, we're going to stop and, see y'all. I said, great. I said, well, why don't you just stay for dinner? They're like, great. And then we ended up playing games till like 10 o'clock at night, which I love. Love family time, was so much fun. But anyway, so I'm like, it feels so good. Let's just go get some meat. Let's smoke it up. So we did some chicken, barbecue chicken. Shout out Papa Hart, his recipe for years and years and years ago, still going strong. So y'all probably saw that on my Instagram. So good. But I'm right there with you, KG. Go to Ingles, load up, get it going, and let's smoke some meat together, people. Let's do it. Show me your pictures, okay?
Let's go.
So let's make it happen. So anyway, we have an awesome episode today. Going to be a ton of fun. Our guy, EJ Manuel, comes on with us.
The best.
And we kind of just rolled through. Like, we got to a certain point where I'm like, EJ, you got to go. I know you have to leave. Let's shut it off. There was 20 more people we could have spoken about. But we're rolling through the ACC. The NFL Combine was last week. We recorded this before. So it's just kind of the mindset going into that and what EJ thinks some of these guys can do. And I love his take on Cam Ward. Get ready, Miami fans. Here we go. Buckle up, because it was really, really fun. So quickly, a message from our friends over at Ingles, and then let's talk to three.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
EJ Manuel, my brother, great to see you. Had to get you back on the show, man. It's Combine season. Here we are. NFL Combine is coming up. You guys, actually, by the time you hear this, it'll have been over, but it's just now cranking up for us, and we'll be watching that. And who else to bring in but my brother, EJ Manuel. Great to see you, Big E.
Great seeing y'all, man. The pod is still alive and well. It's booming. Business is booming for both of you guys. I know y'all are both busy and this time of year, so I'm happy to be joining you guys.
EJ, you're the best. I feel like we need to go double check the numbers. Mac will have our people look at that.
Yeah.
But you may be the most, the person that's been on the most. So we appreciate you.
KG,
We'll
I think
like
this is
mug.
my fourth show. I think this is my fourth appearance here.
We got to get you a T-shirt or something. Something has to come in the mail for doing
Well, look, you blessed me with some great gifts either way. Some housewarming gifts.
Right
So
back
I can't thank you enough, my friend. But you already know. Anytime you call me, bro, I got you guys.
I appreciate
Anytime.
it.
I just love being a part of this bromance. Okay, EJ, let's talk NFL Combine today. And I'm really interested in kind of what you remember way back in 2013, because we're all old. But the 2013 Combine, obviously you had a really good Combine because you ended up being drafted really high. But just take us back to that experience as a player and what it was like.
Great question, KG. Well, the experience part of it is one that the thing that shocked me was like how much medical you actually do when you get to the Combine. I've talked to EMAC about this a lot. When you first land in Indy, you pick up your bags at, the Beltway or whatever, and they pick you up in like a bus, and everybody's going to the hotel, and you think, all right, time to get ready for whatever football stuff I'm going to do. Not so fast. Like that first day and a half is all medical stuff. And I'm talking about measuring. I'm talking about any previous injuries you've had, whether it was last year, whether it was the first year in college, whether it was second year in high school. They know all this stuff. It's kind of odd. It's almost like they went to local doctors and got like a full report of your medical history, which I'm sure they got from their colleges. I spent like the first 6 hours in a hospital, doing MRIs on old injuries. And at that point, I was completely healthy. I was 101% healthy. I was ready to go. But they still want to get pictures of everything. That way, they know what they're kind of getting into as far as an investment. So if you have a shoulder injury that you sure maybe got better from, they still want to know, all right, well, they got doctors that can say, all right, well, this thing might pop up again in 3 years or in 8 years, that kind of deal. So it's pretty interesting. But that was the biggest shock of it. And I always tell guys, like Xavier Restrepo works out at the gym I go to out here. He's doing his pre-draft stuff, and I got a chance to talk to him last Tuesday and just told him, give him, some free game of like what to expect, but also like take you a bag lunch, because when you first get there, it's not like you get to sit down and eat. Like, you're rolling. As soon as you get in town, it goes right to business. So those are my thoughts that first come to mind.
Yeah, it is always fascinating just to hear everybody's, kind of perspective. And KGE, I think that's the most common denominator, is how much the medicals have to do and how much of it that really is a massive, massive piece. EJ, one thing that I'm interested in before we dive into some of these prospects is kind of where we are now. It's such a different world where it felt like back in our day. It's funny, we have all these old references. We're not that old, but it's a totally different time.
We're football old and basketball old.
We are football. We would do whatever, right? Like, we're grinding. I want to show you how good I am. I'm going to do this. I'm going to play in this game. I'm going to do this drill. Nowadays, man, they can't opt out of enough stuff. What are kind of your feelings? Because you've been on it from the multi-million-dollar side. I have not. And so I feel like we always have very different just life perspective on this, where I just don't have that. What are your thoughts on guys not throwing or not running or not whatever at the combine?
Yeah, so I know Shadur Sanders isn't throwing. I think I saw Abdul Carter is not going to do any workouts. Ashton Genty also, I think, is not going to work out.
Yeah.
So at this point, Emac, the way I see it, man, these guys have money already, truthfully. So as far as, I don't think it necessarily says anything about their hunger, because naturally, if you want to play this sport, any sport at a high level, professional level, you have to be hungry. You have to have something within here to be crazy enough to try to go through the training and, the negativity that you're going to face on a daily basis. Is just how it is. It's the name of the game. But on the same time, I think I've gone to the side of, I understand it a little bit more. Like you said, I came into it where I had $45 in my account, so like seriously, the hunger was different. Truthfully, it was like literally hungry. Like, all right, well, I'm tired of eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I got to do every single thing I can do to be able to put a little cheese on my crackers. And so the thought of not, doing anything to help myself, I wasn't going to even entertain. Even if somebody told me, hey, man, you're going to go top 20, top 30 in the draft, you're good. Like, nah, let me go ahead and handle what I can handle, because I can control these controllables right now. But these players in this situation, like I said, Shadur is going to go top 5. And every situation is different. Like, Shadur's dad's a Hall of Famer, so like any thought that he makes or any decision he makes is obviously going to be vetted. He's going to have the best resources. Again, his dad is primetime. So, and is also his head coach. And so some of these young men, I think in 5 years ago, we looked at it as like, they're shying away from competition. I think now, man, and even some of these teams, I feel like some of these teams might tell them, you're good. Like, truthfully, like the tape is what it is. And don't get me wrong, going to the combine helps. But guys who are going to get drafted top 10, top 20, your tape is really what's going to get you in that consideration, because it's really about being a part of the conversation this point in the offseason. Like, the draft's in like 2 or 3 months.
Right.
But if you're having first round conversations now, that's because of your tape. It has a little less to do with what you can do in underwear running the 40. So some guys can kind of go from second to first round with this combine, but dudes who are going top 20 like that, I think they're fine.
Yeah, and maybe it's a bigger question. Maybe it's an NFL question. Like, if you invite somebody and they say, I'm not doing anything, can you invite somebody else? Like, is there someone else that could show out?
Great question, E.
Are there 2 different I don't know. I don't know what it looks like.
So the way to look at it, too, is the combine, you're there for 4 days. So I think it's the 4, maybe 5 days now, but I think the 4th or the 3rd day, basically the second to last day before you leave, is your workout. Those first 2 or 3 days, you're doing a whole bunch of other stuff. You're doing aptitude tests, you're meeting with teams, you're doing meetings with NFLPA. So you still are doing quite a bit. You're just not exactly going out on TV so we can watch you run a 40 or throw the football. And that's where we feel like, that's the combine. These dudes been there for 3 or 4 days before we actually see them on TV. So they're taxed. They're tired. I'm not saying that's why they don't go out there and perform or why they shouldn't. But as far as what the league is actually looking for, general managers, head coaches, they kind of check those boxes off when they get these kids in the room, man. And there's 20 guys behind the camera, and it's just you sitting there, and they're asking you questions just like this. And then you got Jerry Jones there kind of looking at your side eye like, I don't really know if I believe this kid. You got to be confident in those moments. So you are getting a lot of stuff done versus just what we might see or what we may not see on the TV when they go to the combine and run.
See, KG, this is why we bring on the experts.
No,
See,
I mean,
he knows the stuff. I'm just sitting here asking crazy questions.
Oh, hey, look, but you know,
right.
I do
You're
think
100% right.
I do think the combine has changed though, because I looked at the schedule. Our guy Jordan Reed of ESPN, he had posted the schedule yesterday, and I think the guys are there now for 5 days. When I was going through it, it was 4 days, and so they've kind of separated the bench press, I think, to like the last day versus doing it on the same day when you're running the 40 and all that. That's how it was when I was there. You worked out on your last day, you finished, and you got on the plane and you went back home. But I think now they got them there for 5 days. So it's a long week, man. It's a long, taxing week. Yeah.
I think there's so much more to this experience than the average fan understands. And that's why.
Well, KG, not to cut you off, I want to add one more thing.
Go ahead.
That first night that you get there, you assume, all right, I got to be up at 6:30 for breakfast. Not so fast. There's a urinalysis test that hits you at like 3:30 in the morning.
No way.
Really?
They won't tell you about it. Yeah. They won't tell you about it. So obviously, if you get a chance, like I did, I told Xavier, I was like, hey man, make sure.
Do they wake you up?
Oh. Hey,
wow.
Come on. Like, so if you're a guy who's been in the program before, whether it's marijuana or other drugs or illegal substances, yeah, like, and it always blows my mind. Like, how do you come to a combine or one of these events and you have that stuff in your system?
Right.
You know you're about to get tested eventually. So that's another thing. They don't give you a good night's rest. It's not like you sitting up in the hotel sleeping for 6-7 hours. You might get 2.5 hours, and then you're doing your analysis, and then you back up at 5:30, 6 o'clock starting your day.
Wow.
This is crazy and so interesting. I'm fascinated by it. Okay, EJ, before we get to some of these players, because we are, but you bring up the aptitude test, you bring up meetings with coaches, GMs, all these types of things. Tell us more about that experience because, even the guys that don't run or don't throw, what's really important is that they're getting face to face with some of these decision makers, right?
Absolutely. You know, KG, I would say, depending on the position, that might be even more important because, you know, like a kid like Shadur Sanders, or even Cam Ward, you know, out of the ACC, like these coaches don't really know your personality. They know your personality on tape, like we do when we watch you play, but they don't really know you as a guy. And they have 15 to 20 minutes to kind of get a feel for who you are, understand your acumen as far as what you know is your own offense, which you shouldn't fumble in that conversation. Like when you get up on the whiteboard, you should be able to explain to me what you've been running for the past year, 2, 3 years that you've been in that offense or that defense. So that's the big part that these meetings go about. But the way it is, literally, like there's a chair in the middle, and it's a small hotel room. This is not like a suite. Some teams did have suites, from what I remember, but it's a hotel room. And you walk in there. This might actually be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So the combine, they got it set up where there's like what do you call these things? Like a cloth almost, like that separates little sections.
Oh, wow.
And so, it's crazy. And each team has their own little pod and things. And I can remember a meeting with Chip Kelly. He was the head coach of the Eagles. And as I'm doing my meeting, there was a trainer, like a strength staff person that was measuring all my wrists, my ankles, my calves, my thighs, my neck, my chest, my hips, like literally as I'm doing my meeting though. So like, hey man, just sit down. We're gonna have a conversation. Oh yeah, by the way, he's gonna do some measurements on you, da-da-da. So you're trying to answer questions, and that's why I said you can't fumble on the questions about your own offense. You should know that like the back of your hand.
Right.
While they're still doing other things. Then there's another team, I remember, I think it was the Patriots. They have like a deck of cards, maybe 10 cards. They have you go and look through the cards, and then you start your meeting. And then at the end of your meeting, hey, recite those 10 cards we asked you about. And you got to know that stuff. And if you don't know them,
ask you this real quick.
It's like, probably not going to know
anyway. Gronkowski knew any of those damn cards?
Bro, that's what I mean.
Teams do the dumbest stuff.
So I think that kind of test maybe doesn't go to everybody. That was a test that I got.
Quarterback
so maybe
test,
Gronk didn't get that test. Or maybe it's because I played that position that I got that test. Yeah. Maybe they didn't ask Gronk that. Or maybe Gronk's talent for them is what they already wanted. It's literally a case-by-case basis, man. And that's why I also think it's really important who represents you when you go through this process as far as your agent, because a lot of these tests or things come out of left field if you don't know. Like this is a process that you literally don't know what you don't know. But if you have a Hall of Fame dad like a Shadur Sanders, that's why I say those types of resources are super important. And you kind of get a chance to be prepared for it before you go through it. Or if you have a mentor or guys like me who have been through and you want to ask questions, I always share those things, my own experiences. But, it's fun too. I know I'm making it sound like it's stressful and hard. It's fun, man. I mean, this is football. This is literally what you've been waiting for your entire life. Yeah. And then even to go into just sitting on that dotted line, that guy from the Steelers he's a Steelers scout. He's always telling guys, hey, wait, go on the whistle, come back. So that's pretty cool. Like those are those moments. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like when you get there and you're about to go, you see the guy in front of you run, And you're like, all right, well, dang, okay, here I've been practicing this, da da da. And you run out there, and then you finish. You look up, like, all right, what I run, and then you go check your phone, and your the guy who's helping you with your speed and stuff, he'll shoot you a text and tell you what they're saying on TV. So it's pretty surreal, man. It's pretty crazy.
I can't even imagine. And just like you said, I mean, this is one of those moments I think of, like maybe the Heisman, but winning a national championship, being drafted, but also the NFL Combine. Like we all grew up watching it. We all grew up wanting to be a part of it. And for a lot of these guys, man, that dream is coming true. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about some of these guys. And first up, we're going to kind of talk about the first round projections and then jump into some other guys that, we have covered for years and really enjoy. But Cam Ward is, he's one of those guys, man. And I think if the Tennessee Titans needed a quarterback or wanted a quarterback bad enough, he'd be the first pick. But I see him at a lot of places at number 2. He is a guy that has like 18,000 passing yards. You talk about the tape.
Right.
What else does this guy need to do? He's got it all. What could he possibly do here to maybe push him to number 1? Like, could the Titans see him and be like, we've got to get this guy?
Yeah. So their head coach is Brian Callahan, who was my quarterback coach when I was in Oakland with the Raiders. So I know Callie's going to want his own guy. So I do think Cam is going to go in this number 1 pick. I'd be shocked if he's not the number 1 pick in this draft. And that's no disrespect to Shedeur. I think Shedeur is more than capable. I really think Shedeur is going to go third to the Giants. I think it's going to be Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and then Shedeur.
Wow.
But the big reason with Cam is because it's not even what you see on tape. All these guys can throw. All these guys can play. And I told you this after I watched him in the spring game, Big E. I was like, this kid's going to be different. He's going to be special. And I mean, the reason he got an invite to New York is because he's an alpha dog. And I think anytime I talk to scouts and I ask them about Cam Ward, they talk more about his mindset and about his personality versus what we see on tape. Of course, we all see the back shoulder throws and, making plays in the pocket and running around and, ad-libbing like Patrick Mahomes does in the NFL. Now, he'll have to taper some of that back because the talent's going to be a lot better in the NFL, but he'll get used to that. I think it's the mantra that he carries. It's when you go to these teams, you have to be the CEO at quarterback, man. And I didn't even realize that until I maybe went to another place and I saw how they treated and how they walked around. And I feel like Cam kind of already has and harnesses that type of personality. I mean, this dude literally changed the program at the University of Miami, the University of Miami. This is not like it's, no offense to anybody else, but this is big time stuff. And he made the U look like they looked back in the early 2000s. And so for me, I think that kind of reverberates more than what you're even going to see on tape. It's just the mentality and the mantra that this kid carries. And his future is really bright. So I do think he goes number 1 to Tennessee.
That is fascinating, EJ, especially with your firsthand knowledge with the coaching staff there. When you look at the combine for Cam, he's a guy, I think we know he is an athletic guy, but he maybe won't stand up when you look at some of the guys in terms of like, he's probably not going to be the fastest quarterback or whatever it is. But he's got enough, right? So where do you think he can gain the most? Is it meeting with the teams? Is it if he runs the 40? Is it throwing the ball? Like, where do you think he can really gain?
Well, you can still gain if he does decide to throw because you can kind of hush up anybody that might have questions about arm strength, which I don't know how you have those questions if you watch him play. So, yeah, I mean, you can still check a box, really. Be accurate. Don't spray any out routes. This stuff is routes on air. So really you should be able to hit these throws, not blindfolded. And that sounds ridiculous, but pretty easily. And so for him, the meetings I think is probably gonna be more important than what we actually may or may not see if he does decide to not throw and all that kind of stuff. And then the 40, I think that's overdrawn or overblown for a kid like Cam Ward. He's athletic enough. You can watch the tape. His fast defenses in the ACC. Fast defense for University of Florida, the first game he had for the Canes. He'll be fine as far as speed. Like a kid like Jalen Milroe needs to run fast because he didn't have a great week in Mobile throwing the ball. So naturally, his thing is going to be athleticism. He's going to have to be like the Anthony Richardson in this draft to jump up and get into that consideration for potentially being the 3rd or 4th quarterback. Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame, he needs to run fast. The athletic guys need to be athletic. They need to be fast. They run 4.8s, 4.7s. It's going to hurt their draft stock. But Cam Ward, it won't hurt him at all.
That's a great point. Great point that it can, increase you. But a guy of this nature, I think there's just
he's going 1 through 3. He's not going to be on the board after pick 5.
Correct.
He's out of there.
100% agree with you. One thing that is, interested me all year because I love it, but also, there's times where you're like, what are you doing? And you just kind of brought it up there, is his ability to ad lib. And listen, college is what it is. You can get away with a lot of stuff. There's a ton of guys out there that aren't sniffing Sundays. At this next level, that's how you lose games. That's how people get fired. How do you coach it? Like, because we see what we do with Josh Allen and
Right.
Patrick Mahomes and maybe even a little bit, some other quarterbacks there where it is who they are. And you do need to kind of deal with it. But I think some coaches maybe want to pull a little bit back. What do you expect there, especially if he goes to Tennessee and that's a guy you know well?
Yeah, well, if he does go to Tennessee, I think you have that conversation with Cam and say, hey, look, here's the parameters of what we want to get done in our offense. But I also think now these younger coaches like a Cali, he's going to let Cam be Cam. And I'm pretty sure Cali's going to have a conversation with Shannon Dawson and say, hey, look, what kind of guy is he? How does he like to be coached? How did you have conversations with him on the field? How did you make adjustments for him? These coaches, I think these younger coaches, right, are trying to change maybe their philosophy for who they have. I think they realize, like, let me figure out what this kid can do versus what he cannot do. When I was coming out, they were trying to kind of harness on what you can't do. They want you to look like Joe Montana from 1993 or something like that. I'm like, coach, it's 2013. Like, why are we doing? I'll leave that alone. And so I feel like with the younger coaches, and you know what I'm talking about. We've had these conversations. Younger coaches will embrace more of who you are as a player versus try to change who you are. Now, again, you got to reel some of it in. That's why I said, like, you can't put the ball up and, throw it up like you did against Cal and the kid had a pick six. Like, that doesn't need to be on your film. I hated seeing that for Cam because I'm like, he's better than that. But, for him, when he gets to the league, I think there's going to be a level of grace where you allow him to make some mistakes, but ultimately you got to let him play free because that's what got him to here essentially be the number one pick in the draft.
That's a great point, EJ. I think you're seeing this like revolution where, hey, let's harness what this guy can do. Let's really play into his strengths. Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen
Lamar
Hurts.
Jackson, Jalen Hurts.
Great examples of that. Yeah.
That's what coaches are doing. And it's because they're younger. It really is, KG.
Yeah.
It's not because there's this new innovative thought. I think more coaches just like, man, like we can do it different ways. We don't have to.
Right.
There's 20 different ways you can skin a cat, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be a cookie cutter, John Elway, Steve Young. That's not how these guys look anymore. The athletes are different. Yeah.
There's not just one way for sure.
And those guys were athletic too, but like it's just different. It's completely different now.
Yeah.
They had to play a certain way. Okay, let's talk about a guy that we talked about all year. And I'm just so excited to see him getting a lot of buzz and seeing that he could potentially be a first round pick. And that's Omarion Hampton, who had probably one of the best careers we've ever seen at North Carolina for any position. I don't know where UNC would have been without him last year. Nowhere is the answer. Right. So what do you think Omarion can really gain from the combine, and just what do you like about him overall?
I would love to see Omarion run sub 4.5. I've even had this conversation with Jacob Hester on off campus, and he doesn't agree. And this is no ACC bias. This is generally what I think. I feel like he can get picked in front of Ashton Gentil, and the reason why is the size. Ashton Gentil's 5'9", which he is going to be a great back. He's a special guy. We saw him this year in college football. But I think when you look at Omarion, and Emax, even the guy who told me too, he was like, "Oh, this dude,
huge.
Like he's a freak. He's an Adonis. You know what I mean? Like you see him in a set of shoulder pads and helmets. Like he's a big guy. And so I feel like a back like that. You look at Derrick Henry, you look at Josh Jacobs, you look at some of these bigger backs that had huge years this year specifically. Omarion fits that mold. So I do think he goes in the first round, especially if he's not the first back. Let's say Gentil's probably going to go top 10 if he does go early.
Right.
I think it's going to be either top 10 or probably 20 through 32. But I wouldn't be shocked if Omarion comes off the board early. I really wouldn't. Or if he comes off before Gentil. I really wouldn't.
Is there any concern about, I don't know if longevity is the right word, but he had 250 carries 2 years ago. He had 280 carries this past year. I mean, he's the guy.
Right.
But I feel like we've changed a little bit with that, with taking older guys now. And he's not old, he's a junior. What's the hesitation, or do people look at that at all when they see that body of work for running backs?
Great question. I do think that maybe has changed. That lens has changed because of so much of the zone read that's moved up to NFL as well. So you do see a high volume of a guy like Saquon Barkley. I don't know how many carries he had, but he had enough carries to get over 2,000 yards.
Right.
And so I do think the shelf life of some of these running backs, and that's why I say you take a back that's bigger. Again, no offense to Ashton Gentil, he's special, but I want 6 foot, 6'1", 225 versus 5'9", 210, 215. Right. To be able to take that banging and that pressure between the tackles. And so I don't know if scouts or coaches look at it as a negative, Biggie. I think they'll still look at the production and consider that this kid was the best thing on a bad team. If he'd have been on a top 20, top 15 team, there'd be no question about him going in the first round. If he played in the CFP, for example, I think he'd be in the conversation going in the first round. And I think he's going to work his way in there if he runs sub 4.5 at the combine at Indy.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. It's one of those things where you just, he did the absolute most with where he was and was a show. I mean, we were at a game where, man, he had nearly 300 yards, 3 touchdowns
Right.
in,
Was that
3 quarters
against
of
Duke
football.
or
Yeah,
Wake Forest?
yeah. And we're
Yeah,
just sitting there like,
yeah.
this is crazy.
Yeah, he's a
Everyone
freak, man.
knows the
Yep.
box is stacked, and it
Yep.
doesn't matter.
Don't
It
matter.
doesn't matter. He's that
Yep.
good of a player. So we'll see. I agree with you. I think if he runs sub 4.5, look out. I mean, top 12, here we come. He's that good of a player. I asked you the pronunciation. I already forgot it. I don't want to embarrass myself. So I'm just going to say
Thomas.
AT.
I got you.
Yeah, thank you, my
Azarie
man.
Thomas.
When you look at Azarie, he's a beast, man. Like, and here's the deal. We talked with Coach Norvell preseason, and listen, FSU, it was what it was. He expected this dude to have a massive year. He was very physical, didn't get targeted a ton, had a pick, but he's got the body, I think, to sneak into the first round. There's a lot of good corners. 3 or 4, whoever you look at, is kind of where he ranges in regards to the best corner available. This seems like the position where guys run fast, guys jump high, they start springboarding ahead of other dudes.
No question. This is a guy where we talked about, okay, there's certain players where you run fast, this helps you. If he runs 4.3, any range in the 4.3s, we're talking first round. I think if he runs 4.4, most of these corners are going to run 4.4, 4.45, that kind of deal. And that's where you might second, third round, maybe not third round, but for sure second round. And I think it's because of the length. And I feel like teams may be a little bit cautious to take him super early if he don't run really fast, Big E, is because of the production. He didn't have a lot of picks. The team wasn't very good. Didn't play in a lot of big marquee games like 8 o'clock Saturday night, that kind of deal, because the team didn't have a great year. And that does hurt guys. It really does. I think there's dudes who, like I said, play in the CFP kind of games, and they get a little bit more exposure. So that may hurt AT a little bit up front. But as far as the accolades, I know he had a really good week in Mobile. I asked Jim Nagy about Azarie Thomas, and he said he had a really good week. Coaches loved him.
Right.
He kind of fits that mold of a long, taller corner that can have range and run. So that's why I say if he runs 4.3, we're talking first round.
Right. And I do want to ask you this too, because just as a general consumer, but also as a professional, as an elite professional, corners are weird for me because they don't necessarily always have the great, like you can talk about this guy is the best and he has no stats. Well, that's because he doesn't ever get targeted.
Right, true.
What I guess traits, what kind of things would you look at if you were an NFL GM to say, yeah, we're going to take this. I know he has no stats. I know he has 1 PBU and a couple tackles. Yeah. But he's that type of guy for us. What do you look at?
Well, when you watch his tape, I think you want to see his ball skills. Like when the ball's in the air, how does his body react to it? How does he react to it? Which receivers did he actually lock down? Because you're right. Sometimes as a corner, you don't get the ball thrown to your way. But there's still times where you could tell, all right, that's a win. That was a loss. That was a win. That was a win. That kind of deal in his film. So it doesn't always show up in the stat sheet for corners. But I do know there were moments where he probably had chances to get picks and didn't get them. And so, when you're able to turn the ball over, PBUs are awesome as well. But if you're able to catch that money, which is the football, that's where you get into the realm of like the Will Johnsons, like Will Johnson, for example. Caught a pick 6. I want to say, I forgot, maybe against Texas or something like that, but it was in a big game. You know what I mean? So again, that puts him in that conversation. Like, oh yeah, he's going to be top 10, And he is going to be top 10. I feel like if AT has some of those moments, it would have probably made it a foregone conclusion at this point in the draft process, whereas he still has a ton of time before he gets to April to where he can work his way into that conversation.
Good point.
I love how casual we say, well, they'll all run a 4.5, but who can run a 4.3? Like a 4.5 is still,
I know. 4.5 is fast. I mean,
4.4, like 4.5.
That's crazy.
We're talking like a hundredth of a tenth of a second too.
Right.
That's I guess a tenth of a second.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, all this stuff is relative, right? But I even look at like Dorian Strong at Virginia Tech. I think he fits the mold of a long corner. Quincy Riley at Louisville. I think he's going to fit that mold. So we're going to have a good run of corners coming out of the ACC that will have long careers, whether they go in the first, second, third round. It's important, but it's kind of a grain of salt. Like, what situation do you go to, too?
Right. That always matters. Okay. Speaking of a guy going to a new situation and thriving, Kyle McCord. I am so interested in what happens with Kyle McCord. EJ, you're the perfect person to break him down for us because you saw him all year. We know he made a great decision going to Syracuse. He balled out. He was incredible. What can he gain from the combine? And what do you think could be like the ceiling for a guy like Kyle McCord?
Well, I think the meetings will be big for Kyle to show his acumen, to answer any questions that GMs or coaches might have as to why you left Ohio State. Like, hey, man, you at Ohio State and what happened? And I think coaches want to know how he answers that question. Does he put blame on Ryan Day? Does he blame somebody else versus saying, hey, you know what? I just felt like the fit wasn't for me. I had to go somewhere else. I had to kind of figure it out and bet on myself a little bit and went to a team that wasn't that great the year before, and they won 10 games. And not to say that was because of me, but I do feel like I had a hand in that leadership. And so I think the questions that he's going to get asked will kind of be around that. And then obviously showing how smart he is on the board and all those types of things, which I'm sure he'll kill. But the tape for him, I mean, this kid, he won the title in passing yards. So you can't wonder, like, can he throw the football? Absolutely. He can make all the throws, comebacks, posts, digs, seams, all those types of things. I think he's a mid-round guy. I think he'll probably maybe go third or fourth round, because I don't know if he has the athleticism as maybe somebody like a Jalen Milroe. Because I do think, I don't know if Jalen goes in the first round, but I do think that athleticism is going to be something that teams salivate over. You know, I think Tyler Shuck, not to get off your question about Kyle McCord, I think Tyler Shuck made some money for himself in Mobile, and he has some athleticism as well. So for Kyle McCord, I think he's a mid-round guy, but I think he's a dude that's going to go somewhere. He's going to get it figured out, and eventually get an opportunity to become a starter.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think, again, it was proven because he did take that gamble on himself.
Yeah.
Really, two guys, him and Tyler, both just really thrived in kind of their last chance.
Biggie, I do want to add this. Like, Shedeur Sanders not working out is interesting, because what I think that does, it doesn't hurt Shedeur personally, but I do think it opens up a door of who can they say was the second or third best quarterback out of the draft or out of the combine. And if that's Kyle McCord, that's huge for him. So instead of being mid-round, then we're talking potentially second, third round, where he might get drafted. Because right now, I don't think there's no conclusion on the third, fourth guy or the fifth guy. Everybody knows Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth,
exactly.
Kind of wide open right now.
And that's a lot of money. And guess what? Those are good teams probably too. You're going to a good team. You're not having
it's
to
four
just be
teams.
The guy.
Four teams, I think, that are going to take quarterbacks in the first round.
Yep.
So I think the Saints do it. I think the Raiders do it. And who else? The Giants do it, and the Titans. I think the Saints and the Raiders potentially trade back to get a quarterback later in the first round and get an extra pick in the second round. And again, not saying it can't happen. It can. If he goes out there and he doesn't miss and he runs well and he tests well and he has good meetings, he could certainly jump up into that conversation.
Yeah. All it takes is one. All it takes is one team to fall in love, and they'll take you. And they'll take you. Yep. It is fascinating. All right, we're going to get you out of here in a bit. We got a couple more guys I want to hit. The most interesting maybe of this group to me is Brashard Smith from SMU, formerly Miami. This is a guy that was literally a specialist, a reserve, wide receiver, returner that emerged and had 235 carries. He had a total of, quick math here, 18 carries his entire career, and then he has 235.
Crazy.
How will the NFL look at him? Like, what is he going to – is he a running back, which obviously had great success and was amazing. He had 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns, but he also has that return element, and he was a receiver most of his career. What do you think the NFL does with him?
Speed, Biggie. That's speed for him. And that's going to be his calling card when he goes to the combine. And I think he goes to an offense like the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if it's specifically the Chiefs, but you see how the Chiefs can use running backs and make them receivers and make receivers running backs. And so that's a huge value for him. I think him going and playing under Rhett Lashley was huge. It was a smart decision, obviously, because Rhett featured him. Like, he was the guy. And even bailed out Kevin Jennings in some scenarios with Kevin still being young and learning. And so, I think the sky's the limit for Brashard Smith. I think he's a smart kid. Came up and talked with us, I think, after they played Duke, if I'm not mistaken, and his family came up, which was really cool. So having that ability of, like you said, return value, special teams, because that's the other way to make a team too, is playing special teams, especially in your first 2 or 3 seasons on your rookie contract. That's how you get more money too in that second deal. So it's going to be big for Brashard. But again, he's a guy who needs to run 4.3 because he's not a big guy. So with that size, you need to run fast.
Yeah, undersized a bit with him, but he doesn't have a million carries that a guy like Omarion Hampton had. And you bring up special teams. We talked about this with Will Shipley last week. I mean, forcing that fumble in the NFC Championship game, like, that's huge.
Look, KG, when you get to the league, like, I think in high school, people kind of look at special and like, man, I don't want to be on punt. I don't want to be on kickoff.
I don't want to be on any even college. I don't want to be on any of this.
That's how you make your money and you stay in the NFL. Yeah. I know dudes who have had 13, 14-year careers that nobody talks about, but it's because they were contributors and really good on special teams. So good on Will Shipley for not having the ego. I'm like, man, I need to be the running back. No, man. Go out there and earn your keep on special teams, because when you just won a Super Bowl for one, so shout out to that. But also you stay on a good team. So when it does come up your time to get paid, you can easily look at $6, $7, $8 million a year. And then if you expand your role off of that, we're talking upwards of $8 a year. So it's smart by him. Really
Sounds
smart.
good to me. I'd be down for that, EJ. Okay, there's 3 tight ends that I think we really are looking at in the ACC when you look at Elijah Arroyo, Rondé Gadsden, and Jake Brenningstool. quick hitters on all three of those guys, EJ.
Yeah.
What do you like about them? What can they do at the combine to help themselves?
Yeah, so Brenning still stands out because I always liked his picture, his mugshot, the shot he always had with
That
the hair. I
picture's
thought that was
outrageous.
He looks like a bird.
So
he
It
looks
looks
like
like
a
he
bird,
got
bro.
So
electrocuted.
funny. No, but look, in all seriousness, I think he's a dude he's gonna bloom when he gets to the league because he's a tight end that can flex out. He can also block. He does the dirty work too. I think he's a guy that can be good in the play action game, coming off on like if you do like bootlegs and stuff like that out in the flat, he can catch the ball, and then he has big size. So I think for him, if he can run 4.5, it will really help him to show that he does have speed because I think he does. He plays fast. But also, I think he has good catch radius as well. So I don't know where he goes in the draft, but I do think he's going to be valuable. Arondé Gaston, I just wish he didn't have the injuries. Like he's that dude that's going to spend a lot of time in the hospital when he gets to Indy. Like it's going to be a long 2 days for Arondé, and they're going to check all the little small injuries he's had. And KG, going back to the points that we have made about Arondé, not Arondé, but Amari and Hampton having the wear and tear as far as the carries. At least he didn't get hurt a lot. Arondé Gaston was hurt a lot in his college career. So that's going to be something that coaches may be a little, or I guess GMs might be a little bit like, and that does push you back in front of, or I guess behind a couple other guys who have maybe not had that type of injury history. But amazing player. His dad, I mean, this is legacy stuff we're talking about. Wouldn't be shocked if he goes to the Dolphins because of that. And great catch radius, can run seams, that true flex tight end. I don't know if he will block as well as some of these guys early in his career, because again, you're talking about blocking Khalil Mack and Bosa brothers, like it's a little different than some of these teams in the ACC, fam. It's gonna be a little harder, but not to say he can't learn it, and he can put on more weight potentially, so he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And the third, who was the third?
Elijah Arroyo.
I think he might be going in the first round. This is a dude, really? First or second round. Yeah, I think he's gonna be like maybe top 3, top 4 tight ends. I think there's for sure 2 going in the first round, the kid from Penn State and the kid from Notre Dame. People love him. I think, and the kid from Michigan, Loveland. And Arroyo could be that 4th guy. So I think the year that he had playing with Cam Ward, high-flying offense, seam routes again, anything across the middle, he was always open. He could catch the ball in the flat, like I said about Brinkstool. So if again, these are the positions like tight ends and running backs and receivers, DBs. You gotta run fast. Like speed is a premium in the NFL. Coaches love that stuff. So if you weigh in at 260 and you run a 4.53, we talking about a lot of money in Arroyo's pocket. So I think that's kind of the lane that he's in. But obviously the tape will speak for itself because he got a lot of opportunities playing with Cam Ward when he was at Miami.
Yeah, there's no doubt, man. There's a lot of great guys. Appreciate your breakdown on this. It's going to be fun to see what these guys do. As we've kind of mentioned, y'all will already know. We don't know yet, but can't wait to break them all down, brother. Great to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Excited everything you got going on.
Great
Thanks for
y'all
coming
too. Absolutely appreciate y'all. Anytime.